CNN legal analyst Shan joins the conversation. There's not a legal term, smoking gun, I'm not familiar with. Is there?
Autocorrect.
Very esoteric term.
When you read the specificity, what is unusual about these documents is the specificity and the elements, especially in which the Southern District of New York says the President of the United States as a candidate committed felony campaign finance violations. There's no alleged. They just say flatly he did. To Neil Katyal's point, behind bars, is that a stretch in the sense that even if the President were guilty of these campaign finance, you don't go to jail for those things? So normally, you're shaking your head. Could you?
You could. You certainly could go. I mean, there are many campaign finance violations which are more in terms of an overpayment and such. Those are usually made up with fines. But something like this, where you're actually engaging in fraud to fool the electorate, to perpetrate a fraud upon the American people, that's serious enough. You saw the John Edwards situation. They actually tried him. And I think the question really is, to my mind, not to disagree too much with Neil, who I have a lot of respect for, but how much more trouble Trump creates for himself at this point. If more is revealed by Mueller, if he gets himself into hot water with inconsistent statements and what he's already submitted written-wise, then I think they might want to pursue him after his office is over. Otherwise, if there is an impeachment, if he's removed, resigns, I don't think they're going to pursue it criminally at that point.
And it's interesting. This is Jerry Nadler. He'll be the chairman, we assume. They haven't announced all this yet, but he's in line to be the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. The Democrats will be in charge. And he's trying to be careful here. He reads the campaign finance violations, and because he's one of the Democrats, and there's a divide among the Democrats, he's one of the Democrats who say, let Mueller and the Southern District of New York keep going. If they've got several months more of work, let them finish. Then we'll decide what to do with it. Other Democrats say, we get the gavel in a couple weeks. Let's go. Listen to Jerry Nadler, though, saying that even for what he has seen so far, to him, it does meet the definition of impeachment.
Well, they would be impeachable offenses. Whether they are important enough to justify an impeachment is a different question, but certainly they'd be impeachable offenses because even though they were committed before the president became president, they were committed in the service of fraudulently obtaining the office. That would be that would be an impeachable offense.
This is why this is so important to the Democrats in the sense that you have a specific, clear allegation laid out by a U.S. attorney's office, that U.S. attorney appointed by Donald Trump, saying the president committed felonies. So now, what's the pushback when the Democrats say we're going to at least have oversight hearings? Maybe we'll delay the impeachment conversation, but we're going to have our own investigations.
Right, and actually that is something that Mr. Nadler also said over the weekend, is that he is going to now direct his investigators to go and look into these charges themselves, and even short of an impeachment proceeding. And I think it's important that he made the distinction, right, between the legal question or the congressional question of whether these are impeachable offenses, and the political question of whether whether his committee and the Democrats want to then pursue impeachment. I think there's going to come a point, and it may come sooner rather than later because of these charges, that those two distinctions are going to be harder to make, because if you have all Democrats, both Democrats who want to go swiftly toward an impeachment process and Democrats who want to hang back in the way that Nadler has counseled hanging back, both agreeing that there are impeachable offenses, how do you then make the case to Democrats, to their base, but instead we're not going to do that?
And ironically, I think if this were year 7 of the Trump administration, heading into year 7 rather than heading into year 3, it'd probably be an easier case for the Democrats to unify around, right? But you have impeachment is a political remedy for something that could be happening in the court system to an individual who was not an office holder, right? So, but elections are also political remedies, and the president can run for re-election and is running for re-election. And so if you're a Democrat, your overarching goal is to win the White House next time, right? So how do you balance those two goals? If impeachment would not actually succeed ultimately in the end because of control of the Senate, then what are you doing, right? Are you hurting your own case or helping your own case? So I think, that's always what the consideration has been. It is still what the consideration is now.
So the reasonable argument for Democrats is, look, these guys are putting court filings in, a couple times a week, let them go. Just keep them going. If these are Republican-led investigations, so I'm sorry, Mr. President, you're Deputy Attorney General named Bob Mueller, and the Southern District of New York is a Republican-appointed attorney. Let them keep going. One of the fascinating parts over the weekend was the Republicans on this question. Near silence, unless they're booked on a Sunday show and they have to answer the question from Republicans about the question, a federal prosecutor says the President of the United States committed felony campaign finance violations. Here are the documents. Here's the evidence. Read it. This is Marco Rubio, booked on a Sunday show yesterday, okay? Added a lot of ifs, and ifs. Let's wait. It's an accusation, it's an allegation. But even he's starting to get to this.
If someone has violated the law, the application of the law should be applied to them like it would to any other citizen in this country. And obviously, if you're in a position of great authority like the presidency, that would be the case.
If. But this is getting harder for Republicans.
I think that's right. I think the concern among Republicans who see the Trump White House kind of burrowing in on itself, I think the Washington Post used the term in a bunker mentality, is that there isn't going to be a recognition in the White House of how much trouble they're in and how to respond to this, because the president is dug in on this. And as far as the Democrats are concerned, the question for them is, because impeachment is a political act, is it potentially something that could backfire on them in the 2020 election? And while they might succeed in impeaching Trump in the House, because they have control, would it backfire on them? Would they lose the election in 2020? Would it be a self-defeating act?
But for all that talk about the chief of staff, everything we've been focusing on, the real news really isn't there. The real news really is this development last week with Mr. Mueller in the Southern District of New York. A tremendously important development.
And how it affects everything, like hiring a new chief of staff. In a few minutes, we're going to get to the new White House counsel. It affects everything they do because the president knows the Trump organization is now under investigation. The president knows everybody in the campaign who might have possibly known about those payments is under investigation. The president knows he's under investigation because, remember, they're telling us what they have to tell us, but they're leaving out a lot of things of what the rest they're doing. I just want to bring this into the conversation. I made fun of the president who said "smocking gun" twice in a tweet today, a few moments ago. This today in spell check, you might call it. Can't save you. Smocking is a type of embroidery made of many small folds sewn into place. That's from Merriam-Webster, which has taken upon itself in recent days to troll the president on Twitter, if you will, when he either misspells things or scot-free was the one they got him on last week. To the indictment question, we're having a little fun because the president has typos in his tweets, but it's not a funny issue in the sense that, to the indictment question, if you read some of the language, is that the statute of limitations would run out in 2022. So can they file a sealed indictment that carries over? Or if the president won re-election, would those things disappear because he'd be the sitting president in 2022 and the statute of limitations passes?
I don't think they would file a sealed indictment because it kind of runs into the same problem with whether you indict or not. There's an argument, statute of limitations are fuzzy things. There's an argument that would be like a continuing violation that maybe would get you out.
Conspiracy would get you out of it?
Right. Yeah.
So we won't see bumper stickers re-elect Trump, run out the clock?
I don't think so.
I appreciate you coming in.